I keep noticing the same thing in everyone's charts this week. Different people, different situations, completely different life circumstances, and yet there is this thread running through all of it. This quality of things finally having room to move. Like something that had been pressing against a door for a long time just realized the door was already open. And I kept sitting with that observation, turning it over, wondering what exactly was generating it. And then I looked at what the sky is doing right now, today, March 21st, 2026. And I was like, okay, that makes complete sense, because here is what happened in the last 48 hours or so. Yesterday, March 20th, the sun moved into Aries. That is the spring equinox, the astrological new year, the moment when the whole chart wheel essentially resets and Aries season begins. That happens every year. But what does not happen every year, at least not with this particular combination of energies sitting behind it, is what is happening today. Mars, sitting at 15 degrees and 16 minutes of Pisces, is forming an exact trine to Jupiter at 15 degrees and 16 minutes of Cancer. Exact, like degree for degree, minute for minute, and Jupiter is direct, has been direct since March 10th. So you have this first full day of Aries season, this fresh new astrological year energy, and the sky chooses today to complete this particular conversation between Mars and Jupiter. I want to explain why that combination is actually kind of remarkable. Because on the surface, Mars trine Jupiter sounds like a nice transit, a useful one, something you might note on a calendar without getting too excited about. But the context around it is what makes today feel different. We are one day out from Mercury stationing direct, which happened yesterday at 3:32 p.m. Eastern. Mercury had been retrograde in Pisces since February 25th. Nearly a month of that Piscean retrograde fog, that quality of things being slightly harder to articulate than usual, slightly harder to plan, slightly harder to push forward with confidence. And then yesterday, on the same day the sun entered Aries and the astrological new year began, Mercury turned around. Same day. The mind sharpens, the words start coming back. The analytical ability that had been running in a lower gear for the past 3 weeks or so is back online. So today, March 21st, is genuinely the first morning of this new era. Not just the new astrological year, but the first morning with Mercury moving forward again, Jupiter already direct, and now this Mars trine Jupiter, completing at the exact degree, exact minute, in real time. That is not nothing. And if you have been feeling in the last day or so like a pressure has lifted that you had been quietly carrying for so long, you stop noticing it. This is what you are responding to. If this is resonating already, leave a like and subscribe. I cover this stuff every week, and this is genuinely one of the more interesting weeks we have had in a while. Drop the gear shifted in the comments below so I can see who is already feeling this change in the air. All right. Let me get into the actual mechanics of all of this, because there is a lot happening, and I want to make sure it lands correctly. Let me spend some time on Mars in Pisces, because I think it is one of the most misunderstood placements in popular astrology, and understanding what Mars has been doing in Pisces since March 2nd completely changes how you read today's trine to Jupiter. Mars is the planet of drive, desire, initiative, and action. It is the part of you that decides enough deliberating. I am going to move now. In most signs, Mars operates with a pretty clear sense of direction. In Aries, which is its home sign, Mars is at its most instinctive and direct. In Capricorn, where it is exalted, Mars is strategic and disciplined. Even in Scorpio, which is its traditional co-ruler, Mars has an intensity and focus that gives it clear momentum. The common thread in all of those placements is that Mars generally knows what it is aiming at. There is a target. Pisces is different. Pisces is the sign that dissolves edges rather than sharpening them. It is mutable, deeply watery, oriented toward the felt rather than the concrete. It is the sign of everything that transcends the individual, the spiritual, the compassionate, the dream, the thing that cannot be fully captured in a plan or a spreadsheet. And when you put Mars, the planet that needs a clear direction, into the sign that says the most important things cannot be pointed at with a finger, you get a very specific kind of experience that has been running through all of our lives since the 2nd of March. That experience is, I know something is supposed to move here. I can feel it. I have been feeling it. But the way forward is not presenting itself as a list of steps. It is presenting itself as a feeling, or a recurring sense, or an inclination that I cannot quite argue for rationally, but that keeps returning every time I try to ignore it. Mars in Pisces is the experience of motivated intuition, of drive that operates through sensing rather than planning, of the part of you that wants to go somewhere, that is genuinely ready to go somewhere, but the map is internal rather than external. What that has produced for most of us across March is a particular kind of low-grade urgency. Things have felt like they need to move, and the Mercury retrograde sitting on top of all of this has made it harder than usual to figure out exactly which moves to make. The clarity of what to do has been slightly out of reach. The desire to act has been very present. The precise articulation of how to act has been frustratingly elusive. That is the Mars in Pisces experience during a Mercury retrograde. And today, with Mercury now direct and this trine to Jupiter completing, that specific tension gets resolved. Not because Mars suddenly moves to a different sign or because some external situation changes, but because the other half of the conversation finally arrives. At 15 degrees and 16 minutes, that is where the exactness happens. In astrology, degrees matter a great deal, and 15 degrees of a sign is the middle of that sign, what some astrologers call the heart of the sign. This is Mars at its most fully Piscean, not tentatively stepping into the sign's themes, but sitting squarely in them. And Jupiter at the same exact degree in Cancer means these two planets are speaking in the clearest, most unambiguous terms they have available to them. The trine is a 120-degree aspect, and a trine is a harmonious aspect. The two planets are not in tension, not negotiating, not compromising. They are in agreement. They are working in the same direction, amplifying each other rather than complicating each other. Mars says, here is the direction, here is the desire, here is what I have been quietly building toward in the fog of the last 3 weeks. Jupiter says yes, and here is the space and the confidence and the expansion to actually move toward it. That conversation happening today is what you are feeling if you feel it. Jupiter turned direct on March 10th at 15 degrees and 5 minutes of Cancer. I want to spend real time on this, because I think Jupiter in Cancer is one of the most consistently underappreciated transits of this particular year, and understanding it changes everything about why today's trine is so specifically potent. Jupiter is the largest planet in our solar system, and in astrology it is associated with expansion, growth, generosity, opportunity, long-distance thinking, and the sense that life is fundamentally abundant rather than fundamentally scarce. Jupiter in any sign expands the themes of that sign. Whatever that sign is about, Jupiter makes it bigger, makes it more accessible, makes it feel more possible than it did before. Cancer is the sign of home, of emotional nourishment, of the things that genuinely feed you at a deep level, rather than just satisfying a surface craving. Cancer governs the domestic sphere, yes, but more than that, it governs the emotional foundations that you live from. The things that make you feel genuinely safe, genuinely rooted, genuinely yourself rather than performing a version of yourself for external approval. Cancer is also the sign of memory, of the past as it lives in the present, of the way your early experiences continue to shape how you move through the world. And Cancer is deeply intuitive, not in the analytical way of Virgo or the psychic way of Scorpio, but in the way of someone who reads a room the moment they walk in, who feels the emotional weather of the situation before a word is spoken. Jupiter in Cancer, which has been in effect since June of 2025, is about expanding all of that. It is about growth that is rooted in genuine nourishment, rather than growth for its own sake. It is about creating more space in your life for the things that actually feed something real in you, rather than the things that look good from the outside or satisfy the part of you that is still trying to prove something. The retrograde period, which ran from November 9th of 2025 through March 10th of 2026, turned all of that inward. Jupiter retrograde does not stop expansion, but it redirects it. Instead of growing outward into the world, you grow inward toward your own emotional honesty. The question Jupiter retrograde in Cancer was asking from November through March 10th was, what do you actually need as opposed to what do you think you should need? What genuinely nourishes you, not what you have been told is nourishing. Where in your life have you been going through the motions of nurturing yourself or others without the real substance behind it? And what would it look like to stop performing contentment and start actually building toward it? Those are not easy questions. For a lot of people, the retrograde period surfaced some real discomfort. Things that had been functioning fine on paper revealed that they were not functioning fine emotionally. Relationships that looked adequate from a distance showed their actual temperature when examined up close. Home situations, family dynamics, the way you have been managing your own emotional needs, all of it got a fairly honest review between November and early March. And then Jupiter turned direct on the 10th and something shifted. The inward review ended and the outward expansion began again. But this time the expansion is informed by what the retrograde surfaced. You are not just growing forward. You are growing forward with a clearer picture of what you actually need, what actually matters, what genuine nourishment looks like for you specifically. That distinction is enormous. Jupiter direct in Cancer is warm. There is no other word for it. It has a quality of emotional generosity, of openness, of the world feeling genuinely abundant rather than withholding. It makes kindness easier. It makes receiving easier, which is often harder than giving. It creates a sense that the things you have been hoping for are not naive or unrealistic. They are just a question of timing and direction. And today, when Mars in Pisces makes this exact trine to Jupiter at 15 degrees of Cancer, that warmth and that expansion get channeled through Mars's driven, motivated, ready to move energy. The result is something genuinely useful. Not just the feeling that good things are possible. The felt sense that you can actually move toward them. Today is not just a nice day on the calendar. It is a gear shift. I want to talk about yesterday's equinox and what it means that Mars trine Jupiter is happening on the day after, because the timing is not coincidental and understanding it adds a real layer to what today means. The spring equinox, which happened at 10:46 a.m. Eastern on March 20th, is the moment the Sun moves from the last degree of Pisces into 0 degrees of Aries. In astrology, 0 degrees of Aries is what is called the first point of Aries, or the Aries point, and it is one of the most significant positions in the entire zodiac. It is the absolute beginning. Not a beginning within a cycle, but the beginning of the cycle itself. Every year, when the Sun reaches this point, the whole story starts again. A new astrological year. A new round through the 12 signs. A reset of the collective rhythm. This Aries point carries a particular quality of fresh start energy that is different from, say, the first day of any other sign season. Scorpio season and Capricorn season and Aquarius season are all meaningful in their own ways, but they are chapters within a larger story. Aries season is the opening sentence of the story itself. There is something in the collective field that responds to the equinox, even in people who do not know anything about astrology, even in people who have never once looked at a birth chart. Something feels different on the equinox and in the days immediately after, a quality of possibility, an orientation toward what is ahead rather than what is behind. The equinox this year arrived alongside Mercury stationing direct. Same day. That is a very specific combination of energies. The astrological new year beginning while the planet of thought and communication is waking back up from 3.5 weeks of retrograde motion means that the new beginning is not just symbolic, it is practical. The tools for thinking clearly, for articulating what you want, for planning and communicating and making and executing decisions, those tools came back online on the same day the new year started. That is not a subtle pairing. And then today, March 21st, the day after, Mars and Jupiter complete their exact trine. So the sequence is, New Year energy arrives, the mind clears, and then the very next morning, the planet of action and the planet of expansion shake hands across an exact trine in water signs. The new year does not just open, it opens with momentum. It opens with the felt sense that the direction is available and the energy to move in it is also available. I want to say something specific about 0 degrees of Aries and why it matters beyond just being the new year. The Aries point in astrology is associated with things that have global or collective resonance. When a significant transit happens at or near the Aries point, it tends to have implications not just for individuals, but for the broader collective story. The Saturn and Neptune conjunction that happened at 0 degrees and 44 minutes of Aries on February 20th is a major example of this. 0 degrees. Essentially the Aries point. The collision of structure and dream at the very first moment of the new cycle. That conjunction is still within orb. It does not just disappear. It is still operating in the background, still asking all of us the question that Saturn and Neptune in Aries generates. What are you willing to build your actual life around versus what are you just carrying as an abstract aspiration? March 21st is the day after the equinox. The Sun is at 1 degree of Aries. It is just past that Aries point, freshly into the new era, and it is moving directly toward the Neptune Cazimi that happens tomorrow, March 22nd, at 1 degree and 50 minutes of Aries. And then Saturn Cazimi on March 25th at 4 degrees and 43 minutes of Aries. These are happening in rapid succession. The New Year energy is not just a symbolic reset. It is arriving with a series of celestial events that are going to define what the first few weeks of Aries season actually mean. Today is the opening of all of that. Mars and Jupiter in exact trine, Mercury fresh off its direct station, the Sun in the 1st degree of Aries. The gear has shifted and the direction is forward. Okay. Let me talk about the different signs, because the Mars trine Jupiter hits each part of the chart differently, and depending on your rising sign especially, the house that is being activated changes completely. Aries rising, or anyone with significant Aries placements, the Sun is in your 1st house right now. Your annual solar return, your personal new year, the moment the Sun comes back to your home sign. The Sun in the 1st house is already a powerful placement for any rising sign, but for Aries specifically, it is your season, your time to be the most visibly, unapologetically yourself. And Mars, your ruling planet, is in your 12th house in Pisces, forming this trine to Jupiter in your 4th house of home and emotional foundation. The 12th house is the house of things that operate behind the scenes. Things you have been working on quietly, things that have not yet surfaced into the visible world. Mars there says there is a lot of motivated energy behind the scenes, and it is trining Jupiter in your 4th, which means the emotional ground you are standing on is receiving genuine support and expansion. What has been growing quietly below the surface of your public life is about to have more room. Pay attention to what has been developing in the private corners of your life. That is where the opening is. Taurus rising, Mars is in your 11th house of community, friendships, goals, and collective belonging. Jupiter is in your 3rd house of communication, local connections, learning, and the way you exchange ideas with your immediate world. A trine between those 2 houses is genuinely lovely for expanding your social circle, for having conversations that lead somewhere real, for ideas you have been sitting on, finding an audience that actually receives them. If you've been wanting to share something, to connect with people who get what you are doing, or to build something collaborative, this is a good window. The Mars energy in the 11th says the drive toward community is real and available. The Jupiter energy in the 3rd says the communication channels are open and expansive. Gemini rising. This one is particularly significant, given that Mercury, your ruling planet, just stationed direct yesterday. Mars is in your 10th house of career, public life, and the direction your visible life is taking. Jupiter is in your 2nd house of money, resources, and what you genuinely value. A trine between career energy and resource energy is about as useful an aspect as exists for professional momentum, and the fact that Mercury is moving forward again as of yesterday means the communication and planning pieces are back online to support it. If there is something career-related you have been trying to move but kept running into friction or confusion, the blockage has lifted. The clarity is back, the drive is pointed at your public life, and the expansion is available in your resources. Move on it, Cancer rising. You are the sign ruled by the moon, and Jupiter has been in your 1st house this entire time, your house of self, identity, and personal presence. Jupiter direct in your 1st house after months of retrograde means the internal growth, the internal expansion, the deeper understanding of who you actually are and what you actually need. That work is now ready to express itself outward. Mars in your 9th house of philosophy, long-distance thinking, higher learning, and the bigger picture of where your life is headed is trining that 1st house Jupiter. That is a very specific kind of opening, the sense that your personal growth and your longer-range vision are finally in conversation with each other. The direction of the next chapter and the version of yourself that has been developing through this intense Jupiter year are pointing the same way. That alignment is valuable. Lean into it. Leo rising, Mars is in your 8th house and Jupiter is in your 12th. This is a more internal axis than some of the other signs, but it is not a quiet one. The 8th house governs transformation, shared resources, the depths of emotional intimacy, and the process of genuine change rather than surface change. The 12th governs the unseen, the spiritual, the things operating in the background. Mars trining Jupiter across these 2 houses creates momentum in the unseen realm. Something that has been transforming quietly in the background of your life is receiving genuine cosmic support. This is not a transit that shows up as visible outer world drama. It shows up as an internal shift that turns out later to have been the moment something important changed direction. Pay attention to dreams, to intuitions, to things that surface from a level below your conscious awareness. They are meaningful right now. Virgo rising, Mercury is your ruler, and it has been retrograde in the most challenging part of your chart to have a retrograde. The retrograde in your 7th house of partnerships and close relationships has likely meant that the past 3.5 weeks have involved some revisiting of relationship dynamics, some conversations that did not land cleanly the first time, some confusion or uncertainty about where certain connections actually stand. Mercury direct as of yesterday changes that. And now Mars in your 7th is trining Jupiter in your 11th, which is a really interesting combination. The house of one-on-one partnership connecting harmoniously to the house of broader community and collective belonging suggests that a relationship, and this can be a romantic partnership, a business partnership, a close friendship, is opening into something with more shared space, more mutual support, more genuine expansion. If a relationship has felt like it was trying to grow and kept bumping into constraints, today remove some of those constraints. Libra rising, Mars in your 6th house of health, daily routines, and the work you do every day, trining Jupiter in your 10th house of career and public reputation. This is honestly one of the most practically useful configurations in the whole zodiac for Libra rising right now. The 6th and 10th houses are your work axis, the houses that govern how you spend your days and what those days are building toward professionally. Mars in the 6th says the energy for the work is there. The day-to-day drive, the willingness to show up and do the thing, is present and motivated. Jupiter in the 10th says the professional world is expansive and receptive. The career door is open in a way it has not been for several months. This is the transit to move on something professional that you have been sitting on since Jupiter went retrograde in November. Scorpio rising, Mars in your 5th house of creativity, joy, romance, and self-expression, trining Jupiter in your 9th house of philosophy, travel, higher learning, and the direction your life is heading in the broadest sense. The 5th and 9th houses in conversation with each other is genuinely joyful. There is something about creativity meeting the bigger picture, about joy and expansion working together rather than intention. For Scorpio rising, this transit says, the thing you do for genuine enjoyment, the thing you make or create or engage with because it lights something up in you, that thing has more reach right now, more potential, more connection to the broader direction your life is moving. If you have been treating a creative project or an interest as separate from your serious life, this is the transit that suggests they are not actually separate. Let them inform each other. Sagittarius rising, Mars is your 6th house ruler and Jupiter is your 1st house ruler, which means this trine is your 2 ruling energies working in harmony. Mars in your 4th house of home and emotional roots, Jupiter in your 8th house of transformation, depth and shared resources. The home and the deeper transformation axis. Something in your domestic life, in your emotional foundation, in the place you return to, is being supported by a transformative opening. This might show up as a change in living situation, or as a deepening of the emotional honesty in a significant relationship, or as a kind of inner healing around old family patterns. Jupiter in your 8th is about transformation that genuinely changes something at a deep level rather than just rearranging surface things. Mars in your 4th says the energy for it is available in the domestic and emotional sphere specifically. Capricorn rising, Mars in your 3rd house of communication, local connections, and the way you think and exchange ideas, trining Jupiter in your 7th house of partnerships. This is a really clear transit for partnership conversations. Something you have been wanting to say to someone, a conversation you have been working up to or thinking about, has better conditions today than it has in months. The Mercury retrograde had been muddying communicative waters, and that has cleared. Mars in your 3rd means the drive to communicate is present and direct. Jupiter in your 7th means the partner, whoever that is in your context, is in a receptive and expansive place. This is the day to have the conversation you have been preparing for. Aquarius rising, Mars in your 2nd house of money, resources, and what you genuinely value, trining Jupiter in your 6th house of daily work and health routines. The resource and work axis in harmonious conversation. If there has been a financial or resource question that has felt stuck, the direct station of Mercury and this Mars-Jupiter trine together create better conditions for movement. The 2nd house is not just money, it is also what you value, what you consider truly yours, what you are willing to work for. Mars there says the motivation around your material situation is real and available. Jupiter in the 6th says the day-to-day work is expansive and generative. Small, consistent action in your daily routines right now has larger returns than it normally does. Pisces rising, Mars is in your 1st house, your own house, your ruling planet, in your house of self and identity, and it is trining Jupiter in your 5th house of creativity, joy, romance, and self-expression. This is a genuinely lovely configuration for Pisces rising on what is already the 1st day of the new astrological year's 2nd day. Mars in your 1st house means the energy, the drive, the desire to act and move and go is sitting right on top of your personal identity. It is not background energy, it is front and center, available and motivated, and it is reaching across an exact trine to Jupiter in your 5th, which is one of the most joy-associated houses in the chart. The message here is simpler than it is for most of the other signs. The energy to go toward what genuinely lights you up is available right now. Do not overthink it. The drive is in your corner. The joy is in the direction. I want to spend a real amount of time on what is coming tomorrow because it lands directly in the middle of everything we have been talking about, and it changes the texture of what Mars trine Jupiter today is actually initiating. Tomorrow, March 22nd at 4:17 a.m. Pacific Time, Neptune reaches its Cazimi. The Sun, sitting at 1 degree and 50 minutes of Aries, meets Neptune at the exact same degree. In the heart of the Sun. That same word we use for Mercury's Cazimi applies here. but the experience of a Neptune Cazimi is genuinely different from a Mercury one, and understanding the difference helps you make sense of what the next 72 hours actually are. Mercury Cazimi, which happened March 7th of this year, has the quality of mental clarity arriving suddenly in the middle of retrograde fog. It is a moment of precision, of thought becoming briefly sharper rather than more diffuse. Neptune Cazimi is the opposite of that, in the best possible way. Neptune is the planet of vision, of imagination, of spiritual attunement, of the part of experience that transcends the individual and connects to something larger. Neptune dissolved the hard edges between self and other, between the present moment and the longer arc of meaning. Where Mercury Cazimi sharpens, Neptune Cazimi softens. Where Mercury Cazimi clarifies, Neptune Cazimi opens. A Neptune Cazimi is an unusual event because Neptune moves so slowly that it is near the Sun for an extended period of time, but the exact Cazimi, the exact degree meeting, happens only once per year. And this one is happening at 1 degree and 50 minutes of Aries. 0 to 2 degrees of Aries is essentially the Aries point, the place of new beginnings, the world axis. Neptune Cazimi at the Aries point means the visionary, the dreaming, the seeing of possibilities that do not yet fully exist in material form is happening at the most new beginning-oriented place in the entire zodiac. That is not a small event. That is the universe, in the first 2 days of the new astrological year, essentially saying, the dream is visible right now. The thing you have been carrying as an aspiration or a sense of where you want to go but have not yet been able to fully articulate, it has the best lighting it will have all year. You can see it, not with perfect precision, not with a detailed plan, but with the clarity of genuine vision. The kind of clarity that does not come from analysis. The kind that comes from allowing something to be true for a moment without immediately evaluating whether it is realistic. Neptune in Aries as a long-term signature, which is going to be operating for the better part of the next decade, is about the courage to act from vision rather than from evidence. Aries is the sign that moves before it has all the information. Neptune is the planet that operates from the level of the spiritual and the imaginal rather than the concrete. Together they create a signature that says, you do not need to have it all figured out before you begin. You need to have the honest vision, the genuine sense of where you are trying to go, and the willingness to start walking toward it without a guaranteed outcome. Tomorrow's Cazimi amplifies that signature to its peak intensity for the year. If you have been working on something, building towards something, wanting something that you have not quite been able to bring fully into the world yet, whether that is a creative project, a relationship direction, a professional goal, a personal transformation, the Cazimi tomorrow is going to put that thing in a quality of light where it becomes easier to see clearly. Not more analyzable, more visible at the level of intuition and genuine desire. I want to connect this back to today because I think it matters that Mars trine Jupiter is happening the day before Neptune Cazimi and not the day after. The sequence is, Mars and Jupiter create an exact trine today, which is essentially the sky providing a surge of motivated, expansive, ready-to-move energy on the first full day of the new astrological year. That surge of energy, that sense of possibility and momentum, is what you carry into tomorrow's Neptune Cazimi. You are not being handed the vision in a vacuum. You are being handed it while you are already in motion. The motivation is already arrived, courtesy of today. The vision arrives tomorrow. And then those two things, the motivation and the vision, get to meet each other in the same person at the same time. That is a genuinely useful pairing. Most of the time in life, vision and motivation show up on their own schedules and you have to work to bring them together. The sky is handing them to you in sequence within 24 hours of each other at the opening of the new year. That is worth taking seriously. And there is one more layer. Saturn Cazimi happens on March 25th at 4 degrees and 43 minutes of Aries. The planet of discipline, of honest assessment, of what actually holds up over time, reaches its Cazimi just 4 days after the Neptune Cazimi. The sequence is vision, followed almost immediately by a very clear-eyed reckoning with what it would actually take to bring that vision into material reality. That is the complete picture, not just the dream, not just the discipline. The dream followed so closely by the discipline that the two cannot be separated from each other. The new astrological year is opening with both the imagination and the rigor arriving at almost the same moment. Today, with Mars trine Jupiter completing, you get the energy to move. Tomorrow, with Neptune Cazimi, you get the vision of where to move toward. And in 4 days, with Saturn Cazimi, you get the honesty about what it is actually going to require to get there. That is the first week of Aries season 2026. It is not gentle, it is clarifying. Here is what I want to say honestly, and I want to say it directly, because I think the astrology right now is too interesting to cover with vague encouragement. The Mars trine Jupiter today, the Mercury direct yesterday, the Neptune Cazimi tomorrow, the Saturn Cazimi on Saturday, the Sun freshly in Aries. All of this lands in a specific window that is unusually supportive for the act of beginning something. Not planning to begin something. Not thinking about beginning something. Beginning it. Here is the thing about trines in astrology that I think gets missed in how people talk about them. Trines are harmonious aspects, yes. They represent planets in agreement, planets supporting each other's agendas. But trines are not guaranteed to produce anything on their own. A trine creates an opening. It makes the path of least resistance run through a particular kind of action. But the trine does not push you toward that action. It makes the action easier if you choose it. The difference between a trine and the square is not that one is good and one is bad. It is that a square creates pressure that can force movement even when you were not planning to move, while a trine creates ease that rewards movement when you choose it, but does not create the movement for you. So the question today is not whether the sky is on your side. It is. The question is whether you're going to walk through the opening it is providing. And I want to get concrete about what that means, because I think there is a tendency in astrology content to stay vague about this, to describe the energies and then let the listener fill in the blanks with whatever they were already thinking about. I am not going to do that here because I think the specificity is actually more useful. Mars at 15 degrees of Pisces has been building drive and motivation in the realm of Pisces. Pisces rules, among other things, creative and artistic work, spiritual practice, compassionate service, work that happens below the surface or behind the scenes, the integrative process of making sense of experience through a lens larger than the purely personal. If you have been putting off something in any of those categories, something where the motivation has been present but the conditions felt slightly off, the conditions have changed. Mercury is direct, the confusion has lifted. The channel between what you want to do and your ability to think clearly about how to do it is unobstructed. And Jupiter in Cancer is backing whatever you attempt, with emotional warmth, with the sense that the effort is nourishing rather than depleting, with the feeling that you are building towards something that genuinely matters, rather than just achieving for achievement's sake. There is something else worth saying about this particular Mars and Jupiter combination in Pisces and Cancer that I have not mentioned yet, which is that both are water signs. A trine between two water sign planets is not just a harmonious aspect in the generic sense. It is two planets speaking the same elemental language. Water trines are about emotional fluency, about the capacity to move between inner experience and outer expression without losing something essential in translation. The thing you feel and the thing you do are more aligned under a water trine than under almost any other aspect. The gap between authentic internal experience and external action is smaller today than it usually is. That is a very specific kind of gift. Whatever you do today, if you do it from a place of genuine motivation rather than obligation or performance, it will carry more of who you actually are. The translation loss between what is real in you and what shows up in the world is reduced. That might sound abstract, but in practice it means the email you write today will sound more like you. The conversation you have today will land more accurately. The creative work you do today will feel more connected to the impulse behind it than to the performance of producing something. These are not small things. These are the differences between work that resonates and work that merely functions. For the water signs especially, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, this trine is personal in a way that goes beyond house placement. It is your element being nourished by two of its own planets in direct, harmonious communication. Cancer, with Jupiter directly in your sign, has been in the middle of this expansion for 9 months now, and the direct station on March 10th means the growth is now moving outward rather than inward. Today is the day to actually show someone, tell someone, share something with someone what the last 9 months of quiet internal growth have been producing. Scorpio, the trine runs through your 5th house of creativity and your 9th house of bigger picture, and the water trine gives your natural depth a quality of joy today that is worth paying attention to. Pisces, with Mars in your 1st house, the drive is personal and direct, and it is trining the most emotionally generous planet in a sign that is deeply attuned to what you actually need. Follow what feels genuinely nourishing today, not what seems productive, what is actually nourishing. That is the distinction the chart is pointing you toward. For the fire signs, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, the Sun entering Aries on the 20th is your season beginning, your element being lit up, and the Mars-Jupiter trine in water provides a quality of emotional grounding and intuitive depth to balance the fire season's natural tendency toward action over reflection. Aries, you are in your season. The equinox lit you up yesterday, and Mars and Jupiter are asking you to let some of that fire season energy be informed by what you genuinely feel rather than just what you want to achieve. Leo, the trine, runs through your 12th and 8th houses, which are both internal and transformative. The action required of you right now may be less visible than you are used to. Sagittarius, Mars in your 4th and Jupiter in your 8th creates a trine across your most intimate and private axis. The growth available here is quiet and personal, and the fire season energy provides the courage to let it happen, rather than trying to manage or intellectualize it. For the earth signs, Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn, the water trine is asking you to trust your gut right now more than your analysis. Taurus, the trine between your 11th and 3rd houses is genuinely useful for community and communication. Virgo, your ruler Mercury just stationed direct, and the trine runs through your 7th and 11th houses. Relationship conversations have better conditions today than they have had in months. Use them. Capricorn, the trine between your 3rd and 7th houses, puts relationship communication at the center of what today is offering. The words are available again. The expansive, receptive partner energy is there. Say the thing. For the air signs, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, your elements are activated by the spring equinox and the Mercury direct station more than by the water trine itself. Gemini, your ruler is direct, finally, and the trine between your 10th and 2nd houses puts career and resource momentum in the same harmonious configuration. Libra, the trine between your 6th and 10th is your professional axis working together. Aquarius, the trine between your 2nd and 6th houses addresses the intersection of what you value and what you do every day. All three of you are benefiting from Mercury going direct at least as much as from the water trine, and the combination of both is genuinely useful. Let me close with the full picture of what this week actually looks like, because I think it helps to zoom out from just today and see the complete sequence. March 21st, today, is Mars at 15 degrees and 16 minutes of Pisces, exact trine to Jupiter at 15 degrees and 16 minutes of Cancer. Mercury is 1 day out from its direct station, still in the post-retrograde shadow period but moving forward. Sun is at 1 degree of Aries. The moon moved from Aries into Taurus in the early morning hours at 2:33 a.m., so the day has a grounded, earthy lunar quality to it that actually supports the practical follow-through of what the Mars-Jupiter trine is offering. Taurus moon is good for steady, embodied action, not frantic movement, not anxious planning, just showing up and doing the thing that needs doing. March 22nd is the Neptune Cazimi at 1 degree and 50 minutes of Aries at 4:17 a.m. Pacific. The Sun exactly meets Neptune in the heart of the Sun. As I described earlier, this is the visionary peak of the week. If you can give yourself some unhurried morning time on the 22nd, even 20 minutes of quiet before the day fully starts, the quality of insight available in that early morning space is genuinely unusual. Not every week has a Neptune Cazimi in the first 2 degrees of Aries. Not every week has this quality of the large vision being temporarily close enough to touch. Use the morning. March 23rd and 24th are integration days. The Neptune Cazimi will have arrived. The Mars-Jupiter trine will have passed its exactness, but will still be within orb. Mercury will be 2 and 3 days into its direct motion, and you will likely feel the relief of that in a practical sense. Plans that were stuck are becoming unstuck. Communications that were muddled are becoming clear. People are starting to return messages. Projects that had been on hold are ready to resume. These 2 days are good for the practical work of actually doing things that the Equinox and the early week transits have been preparing you to do. March 25th is the Saturn Cazimi at 4 degrees and 43 minutes of Aries. The Sun meets Saturn at the heart of the Sun. If Neptune Cazimi on the 22nd shows you the vision, Saturn Cazimi on the 25th sits you down with that vision and asks the honest question, are you willing to do what this actually requires? Not the easy version of it, the real version. Saturn does not diminish the vision. Saturn takes the vision seriously enough to treat it as something that deserves genuine commitment and genuine planning, rather than just inspiration and good intentions. If you have a real goal, a real direction, something that has been forming in you for a while, and that the new year is asking you to take seriously, Saturn Cazimi on the 25th is when you get honest about it. What are you willing to build? What are you willing to be disciplined about? What are you willing to do even when it stops being exciting and starts being just the consistent daily work of showing up? That question is not discouraging, it is clarifying. The people who come through Saturn Cazimi with a concrete commitment rather than a vague aspiration are the people who look back 6 months later at a real thing they built. March 28th is Saturn at 5 degrees and 9 minutes of Aries, forming an exact sextile to Pluto at 5 degrees and 9 minutes of Aquarius. Saturn and Pluto in a sextile is an aspect of genuine productive collaboration between structure and transformation. Pluto in Aquarius has been rewriting the collective story of power, of systems, of what community and collective intelligence actually look like in practice. Saturn in Aries is asking individuals to build something real, to take personal accountability, to initiate rather than wait. A sextile between them is a moment when the collective transformation and the individual initiation are pointing in the same direction. What you build personally is in alignment with a larger shift that is happening collectively. That is rare and worth paying attention to. So the week from March 21st through 28th is essentially this: a gear shift into the new year on today, a visionary opening tomorrow, practical integration on the 23rd and 24th, an honest reckoning with commitment on the 25th, and a structural alignment with the larger collective transformation on the 28th. That is a genuinely purposeful week. Not a dramatic one in the sense of obvious outer world events landing without warning, but purposeful. The kind of week where, if you are paying attention and showing up, things move in ways that matter. I have been watching these transits for a while, and I want to say something that I mean genuinely, not as filler encouragement at the end of an astrology video, but as an honest assessment of the sky right now. This is a rare quality of alignment. Not perfect, not without its complications. The post-retrograde shadow period means Mercury is not yet at full strength. The Venus square to Jupiter that happened on March 18th is still in recent memory, and there is a quality of tension between what we want and what we can actually resource that does not fully resolve until later in the month. The Saturn and Neptune conjunction is still close enough in degree to each other in Aries that the negotiation between dream and reality is ongoing, not settled. But within all of that, within all the complexity that is always part of any real astrological moment, Mars trine Jupiter exact, Mercury direct, Sun fresh in Aries, Neptune Cazimi 24 hours ahead is a genuine opening. The kind of opening that does not arrive every week. The kind that requires something from you in return, which is the willingness to actually do something with what it offers. The Equinox opened yesterday. The gear shifted. The question now is simply what you are going to do with the road that is in front of you. If this landed, leave a like and subscribe and drop the gear shifted in the comments. Tell me your rising sign down there too. I genuinely read every one of those. The week ahead is one of the more interesting ones of the whole year, and I will be covering the Neptune Cazimi tomorrow. Take care of yourselves. See you in the next one.